Sting, now 74 years old, is a world music legend with a career spanning more than 5 decades, from when he was the lead singer, songwriter, and bassist of the band The Police, where he helped create immortal songs like Roxanne, Every Breath You Take, Message in a Bottle, and Don't Stand So Close to Me, turning The Police into a global icon of rock and new wave music, selling more than 75 million records and winning a series of prestigious awards, including 6 Grammy Awards with the band, before he stepped into an outstanding solo career with albums like The Dream of the Blue Turtles, Nothing Like the Sun, Brand New Day, and Sacred Love, works that helped Sting win 11 more individual Grammy Awards, 3 Brit Awards for Best British Male Solo Artist, a Golden Globe, the Polar Music Prize, and induction with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He also stood out in charitable projects, founding the Rainforest Fund, contributing to music education and environmental protection, all these achievements making Sting's name a global icon, with his music spreading across major stages, international award ceremonies, and serving as inspiration for millions of people around the world. As proof of the talent, creativity, and persistent discipline of an internationally acclaimed artist. Yet behind that spotlight are profound challenges and losses. Sting went through a poor childhood in Wallsend, England, with a family working extremely hard, days facing loneliness, academic pressure, and the feeling of being forgotten, this solitude following him even when he stepped into an international career. The pressure from long tours, separation from family, the first broken marriage, nights wondering whether his voice could bring peace to his soul or not, illnesses of old age, physical and mental fatigue from nights on stage, making Sting many times stand on the brink of despair. Yet it was precisely music, responsibility toward his children and fans, and faith in himself that became the guiding strength, turning pain into willpower, turning pressure into discipline, enabling him to continue contributing, stand firm on stage, and inspire millions of hearts, proving that a legend does not live only by success, but also by willpower, by the spiritual strength to overcome every challenge and loss in life. Before we continue, please hit like and subscribe to the channel. This is a small way to send respect to a legend who has stood firm through challenges and losses for more than half a century. Leave a heart under the video if you empathize with Sting's journey. Every subscription is a reminder that his music and willpower still live on in us. Sting was born in 1951 in Wallsend, a small town on the banks of the River Tyne, England, where the streets stretched under layers of coal dust and the heavy smell of factories, in a working-class Catholic family where poverty was a daily reality and hope always seemed postponed. His father worked in the factories, long shifts bending his spine, hands calloused and harsh from the strength of a man earning a living. His mother struggled with cleaning, doing hair, and washing clothes for others. Her hands cracked and burned, but she still tried to keep the small, rickety house a little warm, though the walls were crumbling and the leaking roof made rainy seasons a nightmare, while the cold crept through every crack in the door as a reminder to the little boy that life would never be easy. In those freezing winter days, with an empty stomach, his mother would still press a piece of dry bread into the little boy's hand and whisper, "Hold on, son, Mom is okay." But her eyes revealed exhaustion and deprivation, like a reminder to Sting that love and life often come with silent sacrifice. His childhood was not only material deprivation, but also feelings of being forgotten and made invisible amid his parents' hurried pace of life, where the cries and small joys of a child like him seemed unheard by anyone. At school, the harshness became even clearer. The curious eyes of classmates brought no warmth but mockery, words that stung the heart. "You'll never get out of here," making the little boy early understand that the world could be cruel, cold, and lonely. That invisibility weighed heavily, but in the small wooden room of the nearby church, where it was quiet and sacred, music appeared as salvation. His mother, though exhausted and tired, still pulled him to the hymn boards and whispered, "Sing, son, sing as if you believe in it." And the little boy sang, each note cutting through the loneliness, easing the hunger, lighting a fragile faith that he still existed, still had value, even if the world around did not acknowledge it. Music was not only comfort, it became a means of survival, a bridge between Sting and the world he felt was alien. Each song, each note in the church taught him to persevere, to maintain discipline with himself, to learn how to stand firm before wordless challenges. Those quiet nights, when the whole house fell asleep, Sting sat by the window, his breathing blending with the echoing hymn. The small boy learned that even in the harshest circumstances, music and faith in himself could turn pain into motivation, turn loneliness into strength, planting a resilient willpower strong enough to keep moving forward in the challenges of youth. When he turned 6 years old, his parents moved the whole family to Canton, Ohio, following the Great Migration wave from southern England, carrying only a few belongings and fragile hope. Even though the journey was harsh, sleeping temporarily at gas stations, sharing meals with strangers, praying for the truck engine to survive one more stretch, but all those hardships bound the family more tightly. Canton did not welcome them with any warmth. The harsh, icy winter made the little boy Sting, who once ran barefoot on Alabama soil, now trudged through snow, his torn shoes letting the cold seep into his bones. His father bent under the weight of labor. His mother's hands bled while cleaning rented houses. But every Sunday the family still lit candles, sang hymns, and prayed, teaching Sting that even in difficulty, voice and faith could become a warming fire. Music was no longer just joy. It became survival instinct, the place the little boy found inner strength, learning to turn loneliness and deprivation into determination to live, forming a persistent, disciplined character and survival willpower, the foundation for an artist who would one day stand before global stage lights, facing pressure, challenges, and losses for more than 5 decades afterward, a willpower strong enough to turn music from childhood salvation into a weapon against every adversity in life. After going through a difficult childhood where music had become salvation, Sting stepped into his teenage years with a burning desire to turn his voice and instruments into a path out of poverty and loneliness. He began playing jazz and joining small local bands, where rehearsal rooms were cramped, lights dim, and instruments often borrowed and temporarily repaired. But Sting was still passionate about every note and every chord. Every performance was an opportunity, but that opportunity often turned into failure. Producers rejected contracts, music venues paid only token amounts or nothing at all, and financial pressure weighed heavily on his still young shoulders. Those early days, Sting had to weigh between helping his family earn money or pursuing his passion, but he never gave up music. Day and night he practiced in the small room, learning bass, practicing singing, testing himself with complex jazz melodies, sometimes staying up until midnight in dim light, his hands smeared with sweat and bruised from the keys. But every note lit up hope and helped him maintain faith in himself. Music for Sting was not only a job, it was an escape, the breath of a boy once forgotten, the voice of a soul that did not want to disappear. Even though many nights he left the stage in disappointment, rejected by studios, bands, or having to watch peers with more stable lives, Sting did not give up. Each failure became a lesson. Each flaw in his playing became motivation to train and improve himself. He performed in small clubs, sometimes with only a few people watching. But Sting sang as if every audience member was the whole world, pouring all his emotion, loneliness, and desire to exist into every note. Those performances, though little known, formed in him the ability to convey deep emotion that later became a hallmark of his personal musical style. In those dark and dusty rehearsal rooms, he learned patience, learned to endure, learned to turn pressure into creative energy. Music became armor, protecting him from the feeling of invisibility, disappointment, and at the same time, a means for him to affirm his own worth. Every evening when the lights went out, Sting looked out the window, imagining millions of audiences who would one day listen to him, and that faith drove him to keep moving forward, to keep practicing, even though no one had recognized him yet, even though there were no awards or recognition. Music was the only loyal friend, the place he could cry, laugh, and pour out all his pain and hope. It was precisely in those harsh years and months that Sting learned that failure was not the end, but a challenge to forge the spirit, that every note he played was proof of willpower, of the desire to exist and triumph over adversity. Night fell. The rehearsal room fell silent. Music rang out like breath, like the way Sting kept the fire of life alive. And it was those struggling days and months that laid the foundation for an artist who would one day become a legend, a person who would make millions around the world empathize and find strength in music, a person who would stand on brilliant international stages but still carry in his heart memories of long, lonely nights, humiliating failures, and faith that never went out. The first lessons about perseverance, pain, and self-belief were deeply imprinted in Sting's mind, preparing him to face greater challenges in the police, his solo career, and the personal losses and challenges that followed, proving that a legend is not made only from talent, but also from willpower, desire, and the ability to rise after every failure. Sting, when stepping into the years of training and struggling in local bands that had forged him, entered a new important chapter in his life, forming the Police with Stuart Copeland and Andy Summers, a trio that would shake the international music world. But this very trio was also where challenges, pressure, and conflicts began to pile up. Right from the first rehearsal sessions in the cramped room, the smell of cigarette smoke and the echoing sounds of drums, guitar, and bass created a special energy, but also set limits on each member's patience and endurance. When songs like Roxanne began to ring out for the first time, a small echo initially in London clubs, no one could have guessed it would become an international hit, opening up tours lasting months and years, transcontinental flights, and thousands of fans cheering wildly. Next came Every Breath You Take and Message in a Bottle, hits that touched the hearts of millions, turning the Police into a globally sought-after name. But behind that spotlight was invisible and heavy pressure, where Sting clearly felt deep loneliness even while standing in the middle of roaring crowds. Continuous tours, performing every day, standing on stage for hours with high intensity, irregular eating and sleeping, being far from family and friends, made personal joys become luxuries, and even restful nights were not truly peaceful because his mind remained tense about contracts, schedules, and music critics. Besides that, pressure from record company contracts constantly weighed on him. Recording sessions, distribution, and rights being scrutinized in detail, forcing Sting to balance between art and commerce, between passion and financial responsibility, this burdensome feeling following him every minute on stage. Internal conflicts between members also gradually emerged. Disagreements about style, songwriting, and decision-making in the band created constant tension, sometimes nearly breaking relationships apart. But those very disagreements made Sting learn how to regulate his emotions, practice patience, and lead a group, turning pressure into lessons about perseverance and endurance. Despite the fame, Sting felt profound loneliness, carrying the responsibility of an artist, a band member, a key songwriter, and sometimes the only one keeping the fire alive for the whole group. In those nights, standing on stage, looking at the stage lights shining down, hearing thousands of cheers, he still felt emptiness in his heart, a void that fame could not fill. Those mental pressures, along with small losses from personal life, from not being able to be with loved ones when needed, made Sting find ways to rely on music itself to overcome them. finding comfort in every note, in every melody, and in the respect of the audience. Every song, every tour, every performance was not only a show before the crowd, but also Sting's inner battle with loneliness, with pressure, and with the great responsibility that fame brought. He stood on stage, his voice ringing out like an affirmation that even in challenges, even when tired and straining under the weight of fame, willpower and passion could still carry a person beyond every limit. And it was precisely in the space between applause and silence that Sting learned that fame does not always bring complete joy. But if he kept faith in himself, in music, and in resilient spirit, every challenge could become part of the journey, forming a living legend. The years with the Police, with all its peaks, pressures, conflicts, and loneliness, shaped Sting into a well-rounded, resilient artist whose music brought not only joy to the world, but also served as proof of the willpower to rise above adversity, preparing him for even greater challenges and upheavals in his upcoming solo career. When the Police had become a global phenomenon, Sting entered a stage where the stage lights were no longer only joy or passion fulfillment, but became a burden, weighing on his body and soul. Every tour lasting months across Europe, America, and Asia, making him distant from family and children, and standing before millions of public eyes, with non-stop pressure from the media, reviews, and the invisible expectations that fame brought. Those continuous performance nights, stepping onto the stage with a resounding voice and a heart full of emotion, but inside Sting was profound loneliness, the feeling of isolation in a world where people only saw the spotlight and no one saw the fatigue, worries, and pressure in every step. During this period, Sting went through his first divorce from Frances Tomelty, an event that shook his entire personal life. The emotional loss, the distance from his two children was a wound that never fully healed. Those nights he sat quietly in the empty living room, listening to the clock ticking, remembering the moments that had been lost, the feeling of helplessness when he could not be both a father and a pressured artist. The inner pressure grew heavier, having to maintain the image of an international star, having to continue creating new music, having to perform with the excellence that audiences and critics expected, but at the same time, his heart always turned toward family, where he could not be present with his children on important days. When the kids grew up without their father beside them, Sting learned to hide his loneliness, using music as armor, using melodies to release tension and pain. But deep inside, there was a persistent conflict, fame and responsibility, light and loneliness, career and family, each pulling him in opposite directions, forcing him to balance every moment and every decision. In those late-night studios, when everyone had left and only darkness and the piano remained, Sting sometimes broke down in tears, remembering the days with family, the children's smiles, and telling himself he had to continue, had to sing, had to create, because music was the only way for him to exist, to survive the terrible pressure of fame, and to prove to himself that despite loss and loneliness, passion could still stand firm, could still turn every note into breath, every song into words of comfort for himself and for those who loved music. Night after night, Sting stood on stage, looking at the bright lights shining down, hearing the cheers of thousands of fans, feeling both joy and loneliness, the sense that every achievement had to be paid for with sweat, pressure, and personal sacrifice. But he still sang, still composed, still faced every performance with a clear mind and a resilient heart, turning every note and every lyric into proof of willpower, of inner strength, of the ability to turn challenges into light, not only affirming himself as an outstanding solo artist, but also as a person who had learned to stand firm, face loneliness and pressure, and inspire millions of hearts around the world, proving that every challenge, every tension, every loneliness could be turned into strength, and that music could save himself. After the years full of pressure with the Police, Sting entered a new chapter in his life when he decided to leave the shadow of the band to step out on his own into a solo world with his first album, The Dream of the Blue Turtles. A work where every note contained the desire to break free from limits and seek his own identity. The album was not only the beginning of his solo career, but also an unprecedented challenge, as Sting had to prove to the public and the industry that he was not only the voice of the police, but also a multifaceted artist, a songwriter who knew how to create and master his own music. He began experimenting with different genres, blending jazz, reggae, world beat, and classical, a mix that few artists dared to try at the time. But that very thing forced Sting to face multiplied pressure, long studio hours, tension in recording every chord and every line, prolonged fatigue from previous tours that had not yet had time to rest, and the expectations of the whole world weighing on his shoulders, the comments from critics, the reception from audiences, all creating a stressful vortex that Sting had never experienced before. Even in private moments, he had to balance caring for his health, practicing bass and voice, while keeping his mind alert to make the right artistic decisions, making each song carry a creative mark while also having to endure pressure from the enormous expectations of fans. Sting clearly felt that a solo career was not only light, but also a challenge. Every step had to be carefully calculated. Every note had to be precise, with no room for error, because any failure could destroy the personal image he had built over many years. Nevertheless, Sting still held firm to his professional ethics, not chasing easy commercial tastes, not compromising with commercial pressure, not filling the album with easy-listening songs just to sell. He remained true to his own music, to the messages and spirit he always believed in, turning the studio into a place to release all pressure, challenges, and loneliness. Success gradually came. Songs like If You Love Somebody, Set Them Free, Russians and Moon Over Bourbon Street not only brought fame, but also helped him prove his unique creativity. But the pressure did not lessen. Solo tours began, the schedule became dense, performances followed one after another, far from family and children, making the feeling of loneliness still follow him like a shadow. Nevertheless, Sting still stood firm, music becoming the way for him to release pressure, to maintain faith and spirit, turning fatigue and tension into creative energy. And that very process taught him that success is not only praise or awards, but the ability to stand firm, hold to his path and faith amid the harshest challenges. Every night on the solo stage, when the lights shone down and thousands of fans cheered, Sting felt both joy and loneliness. The feeling that every achievement had to be paid for with sweat, pressure, and personal sacrifice. But he still sang, still composed, still faced every performance with a clear mind and a resilient heart, turning every note and every lyric into proof of willpower, of inner strength, of the ability to turn challenges into light, not only affirming himself as an outstanding solo artist, but also as a person who had learned to stand firm, face loneliness and pressure, and inspire millions of hearts around the world, proving that every challenge, every tension, every loneliness could be turned into strength, and that music could save himself. When Sting's solo career had begun to reap success and brilliant fame across the world, his personal life entered a phase full of challenges and losses as his first marriage to Frances Tumulty gradually fell apart. The separation was not only the end of a love story, but also a deep pain when Sting realized that the distance from his two young children was something that could not be salvaged. He missed important moments in their childhood, the first days they learned to walk, learned to sing, laughed and played in the small house where he could not always be present. Every tour, every performance made him stay away from his family for many weeks, even months, and the loneliness in the spotlight became increasingly evident. In the empty living room, when the family photos looked at him from the bookshelf, Sting felt the emptiness of a father who could not share joy and memories with his children. The feeling of helplessness when he could not stand by them on holidays, birthdays, or the children's first performances. The inner tension seemed to keep increasing. He had to balance between a career that was soaring, sparkling fame and the responsibility of being a father, between the stage lights and the soft calls of the children in his mind, between the joy of being recognized and the pain of not being able to care for, teach, and accompany his family. Every time he stepped onto the stage, looking at the cheering and applauding crowd, Sting felt both exhilaration and an empty void inside, where the absence and losses in his private life still silently weighed heavy. Those nights returning to the hotel after long tours, he would often sit quietly in the dark room, imagining his children sleeping, telling himself to be patient, to keep singing, to fulfill his role as an artist, but at the same time, his heart always ached for the role of a father that he could not fully perform. That loneliness and loss were not just temporary feelings, but became a continuous challenge in his soul. When Sting realized that fame, lights, and applause could not fill the emotional void, could not replace the years he was not present with his children, the biggest challenge was to maintain his will and mind, to learn how to balance between work and responsibility, between the love for music and the love for family. He had to tell himself that every note, every song, was not only a gift for the audience, but also a way to maintain faith in himself, a bridge to stand firm in loneliness and inner challenges. Sting learned to turn pain into motivation, turn the pressure of fame and separation into a source of creative energy, singing and composing with the belief that music could be a bridge between him and his loved ones, that every song sent out to the world still carried his love and spiritual presence with his children. Every tour, every stage light, every cheer was a test of his endurance, of his inner strength. And Sting understood that to become a resilient artist, he not only needed a good voice or skilled instruments, but also a heart strong enough to endure loneliness, loss, and the pressure that fame brought. And it was precisely those years full of marital tragedy and the pain of being a father that forged Sting into a person and artist with depth, resilience, always knowing how to cherish music and family affection, even when he could not be physically present with his loved ones in the most important moments. When old age gradually approached, Sting realized that the glamour and fame he had accumulated over many decades could not lessen the weight on his body and mind, that every tour lasting for months, every concert hall packed with audience left a profound mark of fatigue. His muscles were no longer as flexible as before, his voice sometimes needed more careful care, his endurance gradually decreased, and the rare days off became more precious than ever. To maintain his performing ability, Sting had to build a strict daily routine for himself. Yoga to stretch his muscles, daily running to keep his heart rate and physical fitness, a balanced diet, and proper rest so his body could withstand the harsh intensity of touring. All these habits were not only to maintain his voice and energy on stage, but also to keep his mind steady, so that the pressure of fame and celebrity would not extinguish his will and faith in himself. Although he had learned how to control his body and mind, Sting still could not avoid the challenges: prolonged fatigue, pressure from the audience, transcontinental flights, non-stop training hours, and the feeling of loneliness creeping into the unfamiliar hotel rooms, where the sound of applause could not replace the peaceful moments with his family. Occasionally, he would look out the window when the city had sunk into the night, telling himself that all the fatigue, all the pressure, all the loneliness were an indispensable part of an artist's life, that these years of sacrifice and dedication were the reason his music touched the hearts of millions of people. The loneliness and lack of private time were not just temporary feelings, but became a part of life, where Sting had to learn to find joy and comfort from the small moments, practicing music in his private studio, reading books, spending time on yoga or meditation, talking on the phone with his children, sending loving messages to Trudy when the tour stretched on. It was precisely in those quiet intervals that Sting trained his persistent will and ability to endure. learning to turn fatigue into motivation, turn physical pressure into mental strength, and turn music into a way of existence, a way for him to maintain the connection with himself, with the audience, and with his family, even when he was thousands of kilometers away from home. Every performance, every note sung carried the weight of time, of age, but Sting still stepped onto the stage with high concentration, with a heart full of emotion, and with a touching voice, as if every note was a reminder that even if the body was tired, the spirit could still be resilient and enduring. The challenges of old age, physical fatigue, and loneliness did not destroy him. On the contrary, they forged Sting into a more well-rounded artist who knew how to cherish every living moment, who knew how to preserve his health and mind as the most precious assets, who knew that perseverance, the will to live, and self-care were the keys to continue contributing and inspiring. In the brilliant stage lights, beside the cheers of the audience, Sting still maintained his humility, his seriousness toward music, and a heart wide enough to endure the pressures, the long journeys, and the lonely nights, proving that a legend is not only created from talent or fame, but also from the ability to stand firm through old age, through physical challenges, through mental pressure, and still maintain his will, faith, and burning passion for music, for the audience, and for his family, turning every day, every note, every song, into a vivid proof of inner strength, of resilient spirit, and of the non-stop desire to exist of a legendary artist. After more than half a century standing on stage and going through so much pressure, fatigue, and loneliness, Sting began to realize that music and fame were not only means to bring joy or money, but also opportunities to create real meaning beyond the glamour. He turned to charitable work, social activities aimed at bringing practical value to the community and the world around him, turning his energy and influence into a source of light for others. The Rainforest Fund, the organization that Sting and Trudy Styler founded, became a symbol for the effort to protect the environment, to protect the rainforests and the communities that depended on them, where each person's individual action could create a big difference. Sting did not stop at donating money, but also participated directly, visiting communities, witnessing the difficult lives of the people, understanding that his music and fame could become tools to support those in need, to spread the message of protecting nature and humanity. Besides that, he also actively participated in music education, supporting programs for children and teenagers, helping them learn music, compose, and express emotions through art, just like the way music had once saved him during his poor and lonely childhood days. Those workshops, community projects were not only charitable work, but also a way for Sting to maintain his connection with music in a deeper meaning, as a means to heal both his own soul and the young hearts, so that joy and hope could spread through every melody, every song, every drum beat, and every piano key. In the rare free times between tours, Sting would often quietly spend time reading letters from fans, the heartfelt stories of children or communities facing difficulties, and sometimes he was moved to tears, realizing that his influence was not only the applause of thousands of audience members on stage, but also the smiles, the hope, and the opportunity to change the lives of people he had never met. Every charitable action, every participation in music education, every trip to the rainforest or environmental protection projects was proof of the social responsibility that Sting placed on his own shoulders. A responsibility not for fame, but for ethics and character, because he understood that talent and fame would become meaningless if not used to do good. Sting learned to balance between the stage lights and the quiet efforts outside, between personal success and duty to the community, between joy and responsibility. His music now became a mission where he could entrust all his experience, pain, joy, and life lessons, helping others find hope, comfort, and motivation. The biggest challenge was still managing his strength and time. Long tours, new albums, charity events, music education, and environmental protection all required him to dedicate himself fully, maintain discipline, and keep a clear mind. But Sting did not complain. On the contrary, he found deep comfort in knowing that his actions truly helped others, that fame and success were not just medals on the wall, but the ability to inspire and save other souls. Every time he stood on stage, when the lights shone down and the audience cheered, Sting remembered that it was precisely those efforts outside the stage lights that created depth for the person he was, for the artist Sting, and for his music, reminding him that even with old age, fatigue or loneliness, resilient spirit, social responsibility, and the will to save himself and the community was still what kept him standing firm, singing and contributing, turning music into a bridge between hearts, hope, and his own life with the world. After many years of dedication on stage, Sting paid special attention to his family, where he found comfort, strength, and the reason to continue standing firm before the non-stop pressure and fatigue of his career. With Trudy Styler by his side, he raised 4 children, Mickey, Jake, Elliot, and Giacomo, with love, discipline, and respect, always encouraging the children to pursue artistic passions, but at the same time teaching them the value of hard work, patience, and responsibility. Sting often devoted the rare afternoons after tours or recording sessions to practicing with his children, guiding them to play instruments, sing, read music theory, and sharing experiences from more than half a century on stage. Each performance and each song he explained as lessons about perseverance, the ability to endure, and how to turn pressure into creative energy. Those simple moments, teaching the children how to regulate their breathing when singing, reminding them how to present emotions through notes, or composing a small melody together in the living room, brought simple but profound joy, reminding Sting that the truest values did not lie in the stage lights or the cheers of thousands of audience members, but in love, connection, and responsibility to family. Every day, Sting watched his children grow up, witnessed them going through happy moments, failures, and learning on their own. He taught them not only how to play music, but also how to face challenges, how to persevere when things became difficult, how to cherish the small values in life, and how to respect everyone around them. Even though he was busy with tours and recording sessions, Sting always found ways to maintain daily rituals, having dinner with the family, talking, listening to the children tell stories, reading books before bed, or simply sitting quietly watching them play in the yard. Music and life became part of each other, a way to keep the connection even when physical distance sometimes separated them. Thanks to those years, Sting not only passed on musical skills, but also transmitted moral values and love, forming the foundation for his children to become independent adults with a sense of responsibility and kind hearts. The moments of seeing his children succeed, stepping onto the stage, or achieving something in life always moved Sting, because he understood that it was precisely the music, patience, and love he had taught his children that served as the bridge for them to continue developing and spreading those values to the world. Sting knew that even if his children stepped out of the spotlight, even if life could not avoid challenges, the real legacy he left behind was not only music or fame, but the ability to be resilient, the creative spirit, responsibility, and love, the vital values that any artist rarely could pass on completely to the next generation. In every note he sang, every lesson he taught his children, every practice session, Sting skillfully taught them that happiness was not only about hearing applause, but about the ability to endure, learn, and love through every challenge. He was both a father and a teacher, both a legendary artist and an ordinary person who knew how to balance between stage lights and family life. And it was precisely the way he maintained these values over the years that turned Sting into a legend, not only for his music, but also for his character, his devotion to his children, and his responsibility to those around him, proving that a true legend is someone who knows how to love, inspire, and leave a deep mark in both his own life and the next generation. When looking back on more than 5 decades of career and personal life, Sting realizes that what he has achieved is not only the hits, the brilliant tours, or a series of prestigious awards, but also the ability to stand firm in the face of adversity, to overcome challenges, and to maintain his character throughout that turbulent journey. From the days when he was still a poor boy in Wallsend, having to endure loneliness, being forgotten and mocked at school, until he became one of the most outstanding and famous artists in the world, he always had to confront pressure not only from his profession, but also from himself, from his family, from the expectations that society placed on his shoulders. Sting's career stretches from the brilliant success with the Police, with hits like Roxanne, Every Breath You Take, Message in a Bottle, to the explosive solo career with The Dream of the Blue Turtles, Nothing Like the Sun, Brand New Day, where he experimented with many genres, combining jazz, reggae, world beat, and classical, step by step affirming his personal value and non-stop creativity. But alongside that were the stresses, fatigue in the recording studio, long tours, pressure from the professional circle and the audience, making Sting many times have to turn to music as medicine to heal his soul and maintain his will to live. Not only professional challenges, Sting also had to balance fame and personal life. The first divorce from Frances Tomelty left deep pain. The distance from his children, the childhood moments of Mickey and Jake that he missed and could not get back, then the second marriage with Trudy Styler and the raising of 4 children. Between going on tour, recording, and taking care of the family, he continuously had to face the painful choice between the stage lights and the dinners with his children, between fulfilling his responsibility to music and maintaining love, the presence in the family. Sting recalls the important moments in his career. The first time standing on stage in front of thousands of people. The first time a solo album was released and received positive feedback. The international concerts that made his heart burst but left his body exhausted. The meetings with artists and audience members where he left a deep impression, all mixed with joy and fatigue, happiness and pressure, like a breath that was both powerful and tearing. He also remembers the important moments in his personal life. The warm family meals, the children's laughter, the music lessons with his children, and also the nights alone worrying in the living room when tours kept him away from home for too long, when the stage lights had gone out, but the loneliness still remained. It was precisely those experiences that formed in Sting the ability to be resilient and a persistent will, learning to turn pain and pressure into a source of creative energy, turning loneliness and challenges into mental strength, and understanding that true success is not only measured by fame or money, but also by the way he stands firm, keeps his heart and character, still cherishes family, music, and community. Looking back on those years, Sting realizes that every victory, every award, every hit carries a price to pay. Time with his children that was missed, health that was sometimes worn down, lonely nights and mental pressure. But it was precisely those challenges that trained him to become a well-rounded artist, a devoted father, a loving husband, and a person who holds firm to moral values, knows how to inspire and help others. Sting's career and personal life are proof that a legend is not only created by music, but also by the ability to overcome adversity, to face loss, and to maintain character. That music not only saves the audience, but also saves the man himself, turning every song, every note, every tour into a mark of will, inner strength, and immortal love for family and music. Looking back on a whole life dedicated to music, Sting recalls every long tour, the performance nights where brilliant stage lights shone down on thousands of eager faces, the tense recording sessions in the small studio, the albums that marked turning points from The Dream of the Blue Turtles to Brand New Day and Sacred Love, every award received, every round of applause that rang out like proof of talent and non-stop effort. But he also does not forget the deep losses and the lonely days and months. Every trip, every concert hall, even though filled with the laughter and cheers of the audience, came with the lack of family affection. The nights missing his children, the evenings away from Trudy, the moments looking at photos of his children and telling himself to keep moving forward, to keep contributing. Sting remembers the happy moments when he heard the laughter of Mickey, Jake, Elliot, and Giacomo echoing in the small house, when sharing simple evenings with Trudy. But he also remembers the moments of emptiness, when his health declined, when the pressures from tours and the media made his heart feel like it was about to collapse. Every small failure in the recording studio, every tiring performance, every difficult decision when having to choose between career and family, all were lessons he carried throughout his life. Sting realizes that every success, every award, every good album or hit is not simply fame or money, but the result of perseverance, effort, enduring loneliness, and the challenges that only those who truly love music can overcome. The memories of tours away from home, the tiring mornings having to travel to the airport, the late nights practicing in the studio, all became proofs of persistent will, of inner strength and the ability to overcome adversity. In every such moment, Sting learned that music is not only a means for others to enjoy, but also a bond connecting with family, a way to maintain faith in himself, a means to heal both spirit and emotions. The lessons he drew for himself and passed on to his children are: perseverance is the key to overcoming every challenge. Family is the foundation to feel true happiness, and talent must be used not only to create beautiful music, but also to contribute, to inspire, and to help others. Sting still remembers the time standing on stage, looking out at the audience, the feeling of happiness mixed with fatigue, pressure, and loneliness. He realized that fame could not erase personal losses, but music had taught him to cherish every second, every note, and every relationship. The biggest lesson is balance, knowing when to stop, knowing when to work tirelessly, knowing when to turn toward family, knowing when to spend time on himself. Sting learned to slow down in ordinary moments, to see joy in dinners with his children, in Trudy's eyes, in the simple but meaningful music practice sessions. Those memories, combined with the challenges, failures, successes, awards, tours, losses, and loneliness, have created a complete picture of his life, both tragic and hopeful, both inspiring. He proves that a true legend is not only judged by the hits or the audience's applause, but also by the way he stands firm through every challenge, faces loneliness, preserves his character, raises his children, maintains love, and uses music to heal, to inspire, and to create lasting value for the community. Every tour, every album, every song carries both pain and hope. And it is precisely that combination that makes Sting a vivid symbol of will, love, perseverance, and kindness, a proof that even after deep losses and adversity, music and the human heart can still stand firm, can still find hope, and can still inspire the world. At the age of 74, Sting looks back on his entire life with a heart full of emotion, a soul that has gone through nearly 6 decades on stage, in the recording studio, under the lights, the cheers, and the non-stop pressure from fame, the public, and himself. Music for him is not only a career but a reason for living, a place where he entrusts all his loneliness, challenges, joy, and hope. The classic hits with the Police like Roxanne, Every Breath You Take, or Message in a Bottle, and the immortal solo songs from The Dream of the Blue Turtles, Nothing Like the Sun, Brand New Day, to Sacred Love, not only elevated his name to the ranks of global icons, but also became vivid proof of his talent, creativity, and persistent discipline. But beside the lights, awards, and rounds of applause, Sting knows that the true value of life is not only measured by fame, but also by the way he overcomes challenges, maintains his character, and keeps his love for family. The long tour days, the late nights in the recording studio, the moments away from his children, The loneliness and physical as well as mental pressure have forged Sting into a resilient person, learning to turn pain into motivation, pressure into creative energy, and music into a means of existence. Sting has overcome personal losses, the stresses in his first marriage, the distance from his children, and still found joy in his second marriage with Trudy Styler, in raising 4 children, in the simple yet peaceful moments full of meaning. Family became his anchor, but it did not erase the pressure. Every tour, every music project, every charity work demanded that he maintain a delicate balance between responsibility to himself, to his art, and to his loved ones. With the Rainforest Fund, Sting uses his influence and success to protect the rainforests, support communities, and provide music education for children, turning his voice, music, and fame into tools to save and inspire others, proving that a great artist is not only measured by talent, but also by the ability to contribute to society. Sting looks back on the years standing on stage. When the lights shone down, the audience cheered, and the feeling of loneliness and fatigue still existed in every moment. He realizes that music not only connects him with the outside world, but also links his inner self, helping him stand firm through upheavals, losses, and challenges. All those experiences create a complete picture: an artist, a father, a husband, a person who always respects himself, music, and responsibility to the community. The lessons Sting has drawn throughout his life are to persevere without stopping, to keep family at the center, to use talent to create positive influence, and to know that every note, every album, every tour is an opportunity to spread love, hope, and inspiration. In the light of his later years, Sting becomes a vivid proof that endurance, the stamina to overcome challenges, is the most precious thing. That fame and success cannot fill loneliness, but love, family, perseverance, and dedication can turn pain into meaning and turn life into a legacy for future generations. From the early days of a forgotten childhood to the international stage spotlight and the profound social projects, Sting has proven that a true legend is someone who knows how to keep his heart pure, who knows how to use talent and fame to help, inspire, and make a difference in other people's lives, so that music is not only personal joy, but also a mission, a bridge connecting people, emotions, and hope. When American audiences look back on his journey, they see not only a famous artist, but also a resilient person, a devoted father, a role model for how to live and contribute, a proof that despite age, challenges, and loneliness, will and passion can still remain strong. Music can still heal and inspire, and life, even through many upheavals, can still leave a vivid legacy of endurance, love, and dedication to the world. Sting is a vivid image of resilience, will, and love for both music and family. But when looking back on his life, we cannot help but feel sadness and compassion for the losses he had to endure. From the childhood days in Wallsend, England, with a poor family, being forgotten and mocked at school, he learned how to survive and turn music into a savior. Later, even though he became a legendary singer with the Police and a brilliant solo career, Sting still had to face loneliness on tours, his first divorce being away from his children, and the terrible pressure from fame and the media. Details such as him staying up until midnight in the recording studio, practicing continuously, still maintaining a spiritual presence with his children, or actively participating in the Rainforest Fund and music education for children, show a person who not only overcame adversity, but also knew how to use his painful experiences to create value for others. This is a powerful reminder for the American people that success does not come for free. It comes with sacrifice, challenges, loneliness, and responsibility. From Sting, we learn that even when enduring pressure, fatigue, or personal loss, it is still possible to maintain character, love, and creative spirit while finding ways to contribute to the community. His story is proof that endurance, the ability to persistently overcome challenges, together with love for family and the will to contribute, are values that never fade, and they are practical lessons for anyone who wants to live fully, maintain ethics, and leave a positive mark in their own life. If you feel the journey full of challenges, but also overflowing with love and will of staying, please hit subscribe to the channel and leave a heart to support the stories of legends like him. Thank you for watching. See you again in the next video to explore more inspiring stories and resilient people who have overcome all adversity.